Now, I'm a school administrator. I'm actually a principal of a school here in Hong Kong. What you've been sharing is about self-reflection. But if we want to really give students that kind of support, we need the whole organization, the whole school, all teachers having the same kind of ability to do self-reflection. Can you share with us the strategy, the tips, or the kind of activities that we can do to help teachers to do self-reflection collectively without giving them a feeling that, well, this is an instruction from the school administrator, okay, go home and do self-reflection, without giving them kind of like accusing feeling. So are there any strategies that you can recommend to schools if we want teachers to do self-reflection together? Thank you.
Oh my goodness, Frankie, that's an excellent question. Thank you. And in your question, I hear your respect and your sensitivity to, as an administrator, to the teachers in your school, that you don't want to make self-reflection some kind of a expectation. And there's probably, and I think you have realized this already, there's probably nothing more ruinous to genuine self-reflection or more invasive and violating than putting a kind of a coercive strategy to it, that this is what we expect that you all must do. It takes all of the joy and the love out of it. And it's invasive, of course it is. And I also heard you say that it is, of course, it's more difficult to enter, to have a commitment to a self-reflective element in part of how we do our work, a self-reflective practice. It's more difficult when we're embedded inside of an organizational culture that doesn't support that. So sometimes, you might find yourself working alone in secret, and swimming a little bit against the current. And it's interesting to me how often in so many schools there's one or two or three teachers that find ways to swim against the current, and they're brave and they accomplish magnificent things that way if there's a current that needs to be resisted. But you'd wish better for people. So how to create is really your question, how to create the kind of organizational environment that is most conducive to self-reflection. Here's the thing. What I'm talking about is unusual and it's new. I really acknowledge that. And I don't see this talked about very often in schools that I visit, teachers that I speak to. It's more kind of in passing, in the corridors or in the staff room. There's a kind of a general new awareness amongst our generation and younger that our internal psychology really matters. So there's more space for spontaneous conversation about the inner child content that affects our day. But that's this informal, almost accidental scenario. Introducing this into a culture of a school, of course you would want to be sensitive and not coercive or directive, more like an invitation. I trust the invitation when something is not compulsory, because initially you find half of the people in a group respond to this with great enthusiasm and they welcome it. Half will just feel very, uncomfortable and suspicious, and I don't want to talk about my childhood, and there's all kinds of good reasons for that. There might be traumas involved, or that we can't, it's invasive to expect that of people in a sense. But an invitation, making possible an environment in which this kind of conversation, this kind of dialogue, inner child aware dialogue, can be held in a safe room. You know, and I've seen it done. I visited a school in inland, in the North Inland in Australia years ago, and they invited me. I was giving some talks and running some workshops, and I was there for the day. While I was there, they very enthusiastically invited me to the staff room meeting. They said, please, I want you to come along and see what we do. And I was led in down a corridor, and we entered a door. And what I saw struck me as very, very unusual. All the teachers, it was a large room. The teachers were sitting in a circle, and the circle kind of arrangement, I hadn't seen that in a school, not the schools that I went to where everyone is sitting in rows. That's what I remember from being a child. And the authorities in the front, the kids are sitting down in the row, all the teachers in a circle. And it was time, it was an invitation for any teacher that needed to talk about what's difficult for them right now. And often the teacher says, I've got this kid in the class, he's rude, he's acting out, you know, he's mean to the other kids, or he doesn't listen to me, or he throws the books, or he won't, you know, he doesn't want to study. Those kinds of things, you know, that happen regularly. And but the conversation, and all the teachers are part of this, the conversation included the usual things that you would expect, like how to respond and maybe talk to the parents, all those kinds of usual things, but also the conversation, the dialogue included teachers self-disclosing. That seemed beautiful to me and unusual. I was excited by that. I was quite moved by it. And the teachers were acknowledging, I feel helpless, I feel frightened, I feel angry. I want to throw this kid out of my class, you can have him. All these kinds of human emotions. And then they went further and they were saying, you know, I remember when I was in school and I behaved that way, and, you know, I was punished, or no one showed me what else I could learn, or those kinds of stories that were then quite self-disclosing. And teachers would enter into, you know, to some degree, their own emotional vulnerability, but with each other. What I saw as a result of that is an intimacy, a love between the teachers. In another school, I saw, you know, the principal of the school acknowledged, you know, a lot about his own shame, his embarrassment, and what it was like to be a boy in school. And I've seen that happen, and it brings, when that's in a group dialogue, it brings a beautiful loyalty. You hear someone else's story, you see the child inside another person. When they let you see that, immediately you'll feel your heart goes to them. You want to offer them your support. It's just a natural result of a deeper quality of human contact. And I was so impressed with the team loyalty that resulted from introducing or inviting that depth of dialogue. And there was nothing about that circle that was compulsory. There was no obligation to sit or share, to talk about yourself in a way that you're not ready to talk about yourself. But when people sit and just observe and listen, and you see the insights that come from that, but also the interpersonal connection that comes, the team building exercise that becomes. When you see that, everybody's happy swimming in a warm pool, you start to want to jump in. You want to jump in. You want a piece of that action. And I hope in the, you know, too short a space that I have, of course, to answer that really very, very, very important question, that I hope that plants a seed or a few seeds of possibility for you. Thank you for asking.
Thank you for your sharing. I can't agree more with the idea that we should try to understand what the kids really need by recalling our own childhood experiences before we react. Yet, this recalling or understanding often takes time, and the class teaching time is usually quite limited. We have our learning objectives to be completed. We get more than 25 kids whose needs are quite different sitting in the classroom. How shall we deal with it in class? Could you please share with us some examples?
Thank you. Of course, look, as I said earlier, the inner child journey is not the only, you don't use it for every occasion. It doesn't bring you an answer to every problem. It does not. It's an additional but very beautiful tool. I think a tool that we can't do without, but it's not the only one. And often when you're in the thick of it in the classroom, so often what's demanded from you is a response. You won't be able to say to your children, give me 5 minutes while I sit over there to do a reflective exercise. You're not given that time. And that's why this is a practice. It's like meditation, for instance. I can't meditate in the middle of my work necessarily, but I make sure that I make a space for that as often as I can, without trying too hard, but as often as I can, because that benefits my next day, my next moment when I come back into the work of interaction. Okay, so the reality of it is the insights that you need very often won't be there on the day that you get triggered, but that student will be with you tomorrow. So there'll be a bit of a mess on Monday. Go home on Monday night and reflect. It's okay that there was a mess on Monday. You come back on Tuesday after your reflection at home or in the subway on the way home. And sometimes I need to reflect 5 times, 10 times about the same issue. And each time I go deeper and I get new ideas, new insights. So this is a practice that I have in my life. And having said that, there are times when I really have to go deep and just sit with myself for half an hour. There are times when I need to visit a counselor to help me through a wall that I can't get through by myself, a therapist. When I meet something very, very painful and scary in myself from my own history. Conversely, there are times when just a pause for 3 seconds, I might close my eyes, take a breathe in, and there's, of course, and I get a new realization, and then I can return to the conversation right there. So sometimes the inner child journey is like snorkeling. Sometimes it's like scuba diving, and sometimes it's like a deep sea dive that takes a long time. All of those levels have their applications. I hope that takes care of your question. Thank you.
Alan, my question is, to me, shame, unlike other core feelings, is kind of more subtle one. So me as an adult, though I've gone through many reflective journey, it still takes time to cope with shame. So in traditional school settings, like I think, especially in Chinese culture, we intentionally impose shame on students. And also for us in this culture, is even more shameful to talk about shame. And I'm concerned with the possibility of re-traumatizing, because kids may be too young, they can't digest and don't have the capability to deal with shame. So like, what can we do with that? Yeah, they may be too young and they may not be aware of that. Like, how can we start the conversation? Thank you.
The challenge, Helen, in answering your question is that I wish I had an hour It's so important. Shame, I believe, is enormous in all learning institutions. Very quickly, when we're learning something new, as I said earlier, there's not always and not for everybody in the same way, but there's so very, very often a deep vulnerability to shame and embarrassment. It tends to be just part of the journey. And without being very sensitive to that, it's so easy to kind of allow children to fall behind. So and shame is such a powerful blocker to our relationships and to our, for lack of a better word, our performing of our abilities, our performing of our skills in the world. It can be deeply corrosive, actually. If your question was, how can we help children in our classroom with shame? You're right in saying that shame brings a unique challenge in that the behavior that comes from shame, sometimes in the shame that our children have, we need to detect it indirectly. Shame causes people to do two kinds of things. One, they hide. They make themselves invisible, or they lose facial expression. They withdraw, go deep. That's one of the things that shame does. So it's so often hard to see that someone is simmering in paralyzing shame. By the way, shame activates the limbic system in the brain and the amygdala, and it overwhelms the rational parts of the brain, the frontal lobes that enable you to think critically, to problem solve, to be analytic, to absorb information, to retain information, and then to reproduce information. Shame blocks all of those things. So it becomes probably, alongside fear, shame and fear are the greatest enemy of learning. They crush the learning process. I think we remove an enormous amount of the potential in our children in a shaming and frightening environment. So shame hides. But the other thing that happens with shame, psychologists that research this, they call it shame rage. When we feel shamed, and a lot of kids that feel powerless in the classroom, they don't understand, they can't be as good as everyone else. You know, they suffer from seeing others get the rewards that they don't get, etc., etc. They feel silly, blah blah. A lot of children react with anger, and it's a displaced anger. They will attack somebody, they will attack the teacher, they will sabotage something, they will attack their little brother or sister when they get home. It becomes a kind of a randomized anger, shame, rage. And if you understand that, you can start to ask better questions. Okay, so if you were also asking, Helen, how do we help our children process shame, be willing to talk about shame? There are many ways, and I think one of the most important ones is self-disclosure. When we, as elders, authorities, teachers, fathers, mothers, etc., when we allow children to have an image of us being invulnerable, superhuman, experts, know-it-alls, people that always know the right answer, people that don't stumble and fall, heroes that don't make mistakes, that casts a shadow that increases the shame of the child. If you're perfect, then I'm terrible. Self-disclosure from the teacher, and in fact, a little insight, a little willingness to show our own vulnerability to our students. Of course, you're not going to go and cry all over them. I'm just, just enough. That's a lifesaver. It's like throwing a life vest to someone who's drowning. It makes them feel safe with you. if my teacher can acknowledge that they've made so many mistakes, then I'm okay. I can make mistakes too. If my teacher can laugh at his or her own mistakes, then that's such a relief for me. If my teacher can say, I'm proud of the things that I'm good at, and there are so many things that I'm really not very good at, what a relief. It's okay to not be good at things. I have to tell you this. The only reason you're very good at being a teacher is because, thank goodness, nature, or God, if you like, whatever you believe in, made you be very, very bad at many other things. Otherwise, you would never have been able to specialize. It's wonderful that we're bad at things. It gives you time to really, because it takes years to perfect your vocation, years and years. Being bad at things gives you time to choose what is your gift and how to perfect your gift. So it's okay, you know. So self-disclosure just breaks the magic of, you know, the black magic of, you know, great people up there, heroes, and I'm so small. You know, it's more mutual, and it's a relief for kids. So, you know, I do, you know, when I'm working with young people, you know, in my practice I don't work with little children, but I do work with adolescents. I do let them know, you know, about things that I'm embarrassed about in me, things that I'm ashamed of in me, you know, things that I have been very bad at in myself, what I'm trying to learn, you know. I don't take a whole lot of time to make all of the story about me. Of course, they're my client, but I open a little window, let them know. And I immediately see the great relief in their face, because children have been brought up in most cultures to imagine, and very wrongly to imagine, that adults are these magical creatures that are perfect and always have the right answer. You know, what a dark place that is. We need to appear as human beings to our kids, whether it's your children at home, children in your family, or children in your classroom. And be prepared, because when you are willing to be transparent and human, be prepared. They start to fall in love with you. They love you. You're not a role anymore. You're a person. Their hearts open up to you. They'll care about you more. They'll respect you more. Okay, that's not always, but usually what happens. Thank you for a tremendous question.